Coast District Deputy Director's Report, which is item 13.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 13 is the Deputy Director Report for the North Coast District. There are 3 waivers for your consideration today. Staff has not received any comments on these items, and we are not aware of any opposition. We are asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to any of the items in the Deputy Director's Report.
Are there any ex parte or speakers on the Deputy Director's Report?
There's no speakers signed up for this item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any objections? Seeing none, those items are reported out. Takes us to item 14A.
Yes, and Melissa Kramer will be giving the staff presentation for this item today.
Thank you. And there is a PowerPoint for this item, please. Item 14A is an appeal of the City of Eureka's approval with conditions of a permit granted to the city as the applicant for a transitional housing facility spearheaded by the Betty Quan Chin Homeless Foundation. Next slide, please. The approved project is a community housing project on city-owned property intended to house unsheltered individuals struggling to secure permanent housing by helping them to establish a rental history. The development involves the placement on the site of 12 standard trailers previously used as construction offices and donated by PG&E to house up to 40 individuals, including an on-site manager. Associated development includes grading, paving, fencing, driveways, off-street parking, drainage improvements, and utility connections. Next slide, please. Sorry, one sec. The subject property is a vacant 6-acre lot on the southwest side of the city near the mouth of the Elk River in Humboldt Bay. The site is inland of Hillficker Lane in between the bay and the first public road, which is Highway 101. Next slide, please. The approved development would be confined to the northwest portion of the 6-acre lot and would cover about 0.8 of an acre, with the remainder of the lot remaining as open space. The city owns most of the properties surrounding the project site. To the immediate north is a training center for the Humboldt Bay Fire District. To the south is the city's wastewater treatment plant in the Elk River Wildlife Area. The coastal trail, known locally as the Hickshari Trail, and a trailhead parking lot are located across Hillficker Lane to the west. An inactive railroad corridor is east of the property, separating it from a row of commercial properties that front Highway 101 further to the east. Next slide, please. As shown in this slide, from the 1950s until 1990, the property was operated as a bulk fuel storage facility owned by Crowley Marine Services. The tank farm was removed from the site in 1999. Next slide. In October of 2020, the Commission approved an LCP amendment for the site, which was not project specific, but was intended to accommodate the community housing project under appeal. The property has several coastal resource and hazard constraints, including its location in an area of high flood risk, shown in shades of pink, and in the projected tsunami inundation zone. Wetlands cover most of the eastern and southern portions of the parcel so that the site can only accommodate a development footprint with limited 30-foot wide buffers from the nearest wetland ESHA. The parcel also has potential soil and groundwater contamination from its former industrial use, which requires the capping of the portion of the property intended for residential use. The LCP amendment limits the range of uses that could be authorized on the site under the mixed use limited designation to only those that could be accommodated with a small footprint and for a limited term before flood risk worsened by sea level rise impact the site. The site was rezoned to add a Q combining zone, which limits permitted uses to multifamily or multi-unit housing for up to 40 people, public utility and public service infrastructure, and a few other limited uses. In certifying the LCP amendment with suggested modifications, the Commission found that future development at the site could be sited and designed with adequate buffers to protect wetlands, and that the strict use limitations on future development at the site would minimize flood hazards associated with sea level rise and tsunamis, consistent with the hazard policies of the Coastal Act. Next slide, please. The Commission received 3 appeals of the city's approval, and this slide lists the combined contentions raised. As discussed in detail in the staff report, staff believes that all but one of the contentions present valid grounds for an appeal, but none raise a substantial issue of conformance of the approved project with the policies and standards of the city's LCP or the public access policies of the Coastal Act. I'll briefly address just a couple of contentions today, and if there are questions on any of the others, we can address those after the presentation. Next slide, please. The appeals contend that the city's approval violates LCP policies related to the protection of adjacent ESHA because noise and light pollution associated with the development could degrade the resources of the adjacent wetlands. The city's approval does not authorize development in any coastal wetlands and requires all new development to adhere to a minimum 30-foot setback from pocket wetlands on the site, shown here in light blue with associated buffers. The wetlands associated with Humboldt Bay and the Elk River are 60 to 80 feet west of the approved development and separated from it by Hillficker Lane. The freshwater wetlands on the unfilled eastern and southern portions of the property are more than 100 feet from the approved development. The wetland delineation completed for the project indicates that the on-site wetlands are located on an existing fill prism dominated by ruderal vegetation and are not hydrologically connected to the Bay or Elk River. Biological surveys and a buffer analysis also were completed and conclude that there are no special status species in the pocket wetlands. And with the inclusion of certain mitigation measures, the approved development will not significantly degrade the resources of the adjacent wetlands. The city's approval requires several mitigation measures, such as construction best management practices, flagging off the work area to avoid encroachment into adjacent wetlands during construction, and implementation of a stormwater management plan with provisions for installing a vegetated swale between the development area and the wetlands, a conceptual version of which is shown on this slide. Also, the conditions of the approved permit restrict exterior lighting to minimize glare, prohibit the use of any non-native species in site landscaping, and protect nesting birds if construction occurs during the nesting season. Next slide. The other main contention raised in the appeals is that the approved development is inconsistent with the LCP hazards policies because the site is vulnerable to geologic and flood risks from earthquakes, liquefaction, tsunami wave run-up, and tidal inundation under projected local sea level rise scenarios. As required by the LCP, a geology and soils report was prepared for the approved development by a qualified professional. The report concludes that the site can support development provided several mitigation measures are followed, including placing structures with significant loads, avoiding placing structures with significant loads over former tank footprints in the southern part of the property, designing structures to withstand seismic shaking according to state building code requirements, and various fill, compaction, and drainage requirements. The city's approval as conditioned also requires conformance with local floodplain regulations, which require in part that the development be adequately anchored, that electrical heating, ventilation, and plumbing be appropriately designed, and that the lowest floor be elevated 1.5 feet above the base flood elevation. Importantly, the CDP also includes conditions mitigating tsunami and sea level rise hazards. Condition 9 requires implementation of a tsunami evacuation plan for the facility with procedures for the safe evacuation of all occupants in the event of a tsunami. Condition 11 limits the term of authorization of the approved development to the time period projected to avoid flooding under the medium-high sea level rise risk aversion scenario, combined with a 100-year flood event encroaching onto the site. Such flooding could occur on the site by 2050. The permit conditions require removal of the approved development if flood levels worse than predicted begin to impact the site earlier. Next slide. Based on the 5 substantial issue factors addressed in detail in the staff report, and given the high degree of factual and legal support for the city's decision, staff believes that the appeals did not raise a substantial issue of Coastal Act and LCP conformance. You can find the motion and resolution for adopting the staff recommendation of no substantial issue on page 5. And that concludes staff's presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any ex parte on this appeal?
I have ex parte on this appeal. I had a conversation that is outlined in an email. It was before couple weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's outlined in email and ex parte, as well as another email that came in. So they're outlined there.
All right, they're on file. Any other commissioners with ex parte? All right, staff is recommending no substantial issue. The appellant and applicant will have up to 3 minutes total, as well qualified individual speakers. So at this point, who do we have on behalf of the appellants?
Mr. Chair, we have 2 appellants signed up to speak on this item.
All right, let's bring them in. The appellants will have a total of 3 minutes in total. So
First, we have Janelle Egger, followed by Ann White. Janelle Egger, I'm going to bring you in as panelist now. This may take a moment to load. Okay, you should be in as panelists. Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record.
Janelle Egger. Hello,
Yes, we
Hi,
can hear you.
you can hear me? Okay, Janelle Egger.
hi, Janelle. Are you one of 2 speakers speaking for the appellant, or do you have?
Yes,
Okay, you both will have a total of 3 minutes. You can divide that however you'd like. Please proceed.
I'll take a minute and a half. The issue that I want to address is the idea that there's no conflict with the LC with the local coastal plan. The LUP policy 5B1 says that the city shall provide public open space and shoreline access. The city has done that. However, it also says that they will consider and protect scenic and visual qualities of coastal areas that are visible from scenic public vista points and waterfront walkways. This will obstruct the open space that is there. If there's 6 acres of open space, if the project could be put on the other side of the parcel, the open space would not be impacted. But open space is important. For this, for the trail, to have it, that open space removed would place the only real obstruction along the whole length of the Hicksari Trail. There are also the conditions have increased the cost of the project, and this is a project for transitional housing. The costs will fall to a small nonprofit, and most importantly, there are alternative sites that would not cost as much and would not impact the visual, the open space nature of the trail. I don't know what my time is. How am I doing on time? Can you?
I don't have the clock in front of me.
Okay, well, I'll just.
Yeah.
There is a 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the timer.
Okay, sorry I took so long.
Thank you. Next, do you have your other speaker want to address us for the balance of your time?
Okay, next speaker, we have Ann White. I see you called in. Please unmute by dialing *6. Ann White, you may unmute yourself by dialing *6. Okay. You may have to mute your phone, unmute your phone itself after dialing *6 to unmute.
If we can't get Ms. White, maybe Ms. Egger can take the balance of their time if they'd like.
I would just repeat that the land use policy says that the city shall provide open space and shoreline access, and this would impact that open space. It says that they should consider and protect the scenic and visual qualities of the coastal areas. And I would say that this project has the conditions, raise the costs and will impact the project, and that there are alternative sites that would not have the cost and would not impact the visual quality of the path. Sorry, I'm sort of, but I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. Who do we have on behalf of the city?
We have Kristen Goetz from City of Eureka available for questions.
Okay, does the city have a speaker that wants to speak to the commission and address the appeal? Or do they just want to be available for questions?
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kristen Getz, and I'm a principal planner with the City of Eureka. The city is in need of housing, as is much of California, and we believe that this project will provide up to 40 transitional housing units for folks who are moving from homelessness to housing. And we would respectfully request that you deny the appeal.
All right, thank you. Staff, do we have any additional qualified speakers? Speakers who participated in the local review and testified?
I don't believe so.
All right, with that, we'll bring it back to staff for closing comments.
Mr. Chair, this is Bob Merrill. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to point out that as Melissa had mentioned, the commission did consider an LCP amendment last October to rezone the site in a way that could accommodate this anticipated project. And the visual resource concerns were addressed by the commission at that time. The area of the project is only a 0.8 acre portion of a larger 6 acre parcel. The balance of it, which is wetland and habitat. And as the site is inland of the coastal trail, we think that the visual resources will actually be protected and mitigated. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. All right, we'll bring it to the commission for deliberation or action. Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Padilla. So I want, first of all, thank staff and everybody on the work that's been done here. And I also want to thank the commenters and even the appellants for their continued efforts to really look at and preserve these resources, wetland resources, visual resources around Humboldt Bay, and be advocates for the trail. And that being said, I've, as you all know, been a strong and dedicated advocate for those resources, as well as, and especially the Humboldt Bay Trail and the California Coastal Trail. I do believe that we did adjudicate this through the LCP amendments that we did already. And so I feel like some of this is a sort of a re-adjudication of that. And I also want to say that I do believe that from the perspective of this project site, that 13% of it is to be developed in a way that is itself able to be removed if necessary, and those sorts of things. And I do believe that the visual context has been considered, which is what is in the language there. It's not an absolute, it's a consideration, and the protection, I believe that the efforts have been made. So if it's, I'm happy to make the motion to move this forward when that time comes.
Any other commissioners want to be recognized? If not, Commissioner Wilson, please feel free.
Thank you. Hold on, I gotta find it in my thing here. I move that the commission determine and resolve that appeal number A-1-2021 EUR-21-005 does not present a substantial issue with respect to the grounds on which the appeal has been filed under section 30603 of the Coastal Act regarding consistency with the certified LCP and the public access and recreation policies of the Coastal Act. And I recommend a yes vote.
Second.
Okay, it looks like that was Wilson Rice. Any further, do you want to speak any further to the motion?
I do again want to reiterate that I don't want to diminish the efforts of these dedicated citizens in their viewpoints and their efforts around Humboldt Bay. I think it's really important, but I do also want to acknowledge we have people living in these environments in their cars and in tents and even in and around this location. And so any pressure that we can take off of those situations is greatly needed. And I would offer that any other site that is amenable to this type of development, the city of Eureka should be looking at, and I believe they really are. So we're doing what we can. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
If I could just want to appreciate the Commissioner Wilson's really comprehensive look at this project and all the surrounding issues, environment, people, resources, and also the engaged public, and appreciate the discourse and dialogue that's happened around that. And I think this is the appropriate solution for all concerned. Thank you.
Commissioner Rice, agree. Any commission deliberation? If not, mover seconder asking for yes vote, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. Commissioner Rice.
Yes.
Rice, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Brownsey.
Aye.
Brownsey, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Groom.
Yes.
Groom, yes. Chair Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, yes. The vote is unanimous.
With that, the commission finds no substantial issue.